Welcome to another edition of Riverside Theater's Putting It Together. And by it, we mean shows. Riverside Theater is the only professional producing theater on Florida's Treasure Coast, which means we create our own shows right here for our stages in Vero Beach. Today, we're going to talk sound, if you can hear me, and we're talking to Nate Dixon, who is new to us. Nate, welcome.
Thank you.
Please share a little bit of information for our audiences of where you're coming from. What made you think about sound as a career?
Well, it's something that I just sort of fell into, I think. I started doing stuff like this on a much smaller scale back in high school, continued with that through college, and just sort of kept doing it, and then it became my career path. So, yeah, that's kind of how I started. I grew up in Marysville, Ohio, and lived there for a while, did some national touring, and now I'm here.
Fabulous. We're thrilled to have you here. Now, we've spoken to other departments, and we know how involved they are at the beginning of the process of putting a show together. How important is sound at the very beginning? I mean, you have nothing to microphone or to record at that point, correct?
That's true. A big part of my job is once the show is on the stage, and I'm here for every show dealing with that. But before that part, I'm discussing with the production manager, with the sound design team, how to realize the sound design for the upcoming show. That all starts on paper, and then before anything happens on the stage, we're back here programming this console to do what we want, because this changes for every show.
Now, with a show with 20 or 30 people, how complicated is it to keep track of who is singing, who is not, when to turn their mics on and off? How do you keep track of that?
Well, we start by just watching the rehearsals, so we're able to kind of track, because we try to have people's mics on only when they're singing. So we're looking to make sure that even if they're on stage, if they're not singing, that their microphone is off. So we're in rehearsals kind of making notations to know that, so then when we're running the show, we can make sure that that is all turned off when they're off stage or when they're not singing.
And it's not just actors. You have to microphone the band. You have to have special effects for the show as well, do you not?
Correct, yeah. Part of what the sound design team will do is they'll create the sound effects that I will execute during the show. If there's like an explosion or a gunshot or anything, that's coming from the sound design team. That's something that I'll play during the show when it's needed. And with the band is live as well, so we have a bunch of microphones on the band as well. And that's the same thing. We only want their microphones on when they're playing. You know, we don't want to hear them chewing gum during the show. So we try to make sure that we talk with the music team and the music director and know who's playing what when, so then we can go in and make sure that only the microphones that are on. So especially with the woodwind players, because they have multiple microphones, and depending on what kind of instrument that they're playing, because a lot of them will play multiple things. And we don't want the microphone for the saxophone to be on when they're playing the flute, because then it'll just sound weird coming through both microphones at the same time.
Well, with the set design department and the paint department, once the show is up and running, they're pretty much done. It's really the lighting and especially the sound that is a live part of the show.
Yeah.
What do you do when something goes wrong? When a microphone isn't working?
Well, we have multiple people, so I'm up here mixing the show, but I'll have somebody backstage whose entire job once the show starts is to make sure nothing gets broken, but when something does get broken, they fix it as fast as possible, so that we don't have an issue where someone's going on stage with a broken microphone, because that can happen. And the biggest thing that we do is for a lead actor or a lead actress, we'll actually go in and put two microphones on that person, so that if one were to fail, we can switch to the backup, so then there's no interruption in their songs or their dialogue or whatnot. And we do that because with usually with the leads, they're not on stage, or I'm sorry, they're not off stage very often. So the time we might have, they might be on stage for a 20-minute period, and we might not be able to get to them, and we don't want to have a show with the lead not having a microphone for 20 minutes.
Now, I'm assuming you talked about mixing. So I'm assuming that technology-wise, sound has advanced tremendously over the last 5 years, let alone 20 years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's still a lot of manual mixing. So like I'm physically pushing the faders up and down when people are on stage, but or off stage. But we do have a lot of automation to make that part of the job much easier as well. So it's not quite so crazy as it could have been with the use of some built-in automation to our sound systems.
Cool. One last question. Has there ever been a sort of sound effect or a sort of show with a unique sound that has really spoken to you? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, of course. I wouldn't say necessarily any one sound or like a single sound effect or a single song, but in terms of an entire soundscape of a show with the music and the singing and everything. I recently did the tour of Finding Neverland about a year and a half ago,
yeah.
and that's a really fun show. And when all the elements come together with that show, and when everything's working, and songs can just be so powerful with that sort of show, and it was a really fun experience, and it was always, even though we did the show like 400 times over a course of a year, it never really got old, and never really got boring. It was always fun to do.
Well, cool. Well, Nate, thank you for taking some time and introducing yourself to our audience, but also getting to share your knowledge with them, and they have a better understanding of what it is to put the show together. Many people in the audience don't see you back here actually working. They might see someone in the corner back here, but not actually know exactly how your job affects what's on stage. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for coming to another episode of Putting It Together. And next we'll see where we go.